G'day, welcome back to the 40 channel. So today we're going to look at the clutch. We changed the clutch out. We've already seen how the gearbox and all that stuff comes apart. So follow that, then you can get the clutch. Let's get straight into it. Righto, the gearbox out. Just come up a little bit more. And now we need to change our clutch. So we've got a brand new clutch system. It's a whole new heavy duty clutch. Heaps on the market. I'm not going to tell you what to buy, what's better than others. Huge range in prices, general duty, heavy duty, the whole lot. So you pick the application that's going to be right for you. First thing we need to do is remove all our bolts so we can drop off the front plate, the pressure plate, and pull out our clutch disc. Now the kits, they should come with a new thrust bearing, new pilot bearing, an alignment tool. So make sure that kit has all those things in it, because if they don't, you might want to go and buy those extra bits and pieces while you're this deep into the project. All right, let's rip it out. So you want to turn your motor over so that we can get the bolt access, 12mm bolt access right to the bottom. There's a little divot right here that you can slide in, that you can undo your bolts. Once you've undone that bolt, turn it over again. You can, if you're lucky enough, you can turn it over by hand. If it's a nice fresh motor that's nice and tight, then you'll need a little jimmy bar or a little pry bar, and you can turn it on the flywheel here. Well, this is the last bolt. I've just cracked it off. I'm going to actually throw the alignment tool in. Just like that. And that way when I undo it, it's not going to fall down and crash onto the ground. Not that it matters because we're replacing it anyway. Or worse, catch my fingers. So we can undo that by hand. Pull that alignment tool out. Now I've got it all. Righto, that's in actually really good condition. This clutch plate actually has a heap of life left on it, and you can normally tell by the rivets. So we'll do a quick comparison against the new one, but it might have actually been fairly new when we bought it. So anyway, we're going to give it a fresh one. Righto, here's our new clutch. Here's our current clutch. Now, to be honest, there's not much wear on the one we're pulling out. So what we'll actually do is we'll actually keep this for a backup, just in case we wear out a clutch, or someone needs a clutch, or one of the others need one. We can throw that in without having to fork out big dollars. But we're going to throw in the new one regardless. Right, the next two things you want to look for is your flywheel. So you want to make sure that there's no grooves, no marks. This flywheel, it looks like it's been machined when they put that other clutch in, so it's in really, really good condition. There was not a mark, not a groove on it. That's a really good thing. But the pilot bearing is shot in this thing. So obviously they went to all that effort, but they didn't put a pilot bearing in. I can feel it. It is really notchy and really tight. So we're going to have to pull out that pilot bearing and replace it, and the rest can go in. So, but double check your flywheel. They actually say if you don't get it machined, it voids the warranty of the clutch. So, but I'm so happy with this one, we're going to run with it. Right, I've got the bearing puller set up onto the pilot bearing, so we'll just try and pull this bearing out now. Now, if you don't have a bearing puller, I've never tried it myself, but the old bread trick seems to work for a lot of people. Maybe one day I'll give it a go. You are kidding me. So I've actually been working on that pilot bearing no word of a lie, for 4 hours. We have tried absolutely everything. It's just been an absolute nightmare. We've heated, we've frozen, broken pullers on it. We ended up welding the inside of the inner race. Just so it melted, smashed it out with a chisel, and then we welded the inside of the bearing so that it shrunk. And then we got it out. So thanks to my father-in-law Ian. Happy days. He doesn't know yet. Ian, it's out.
That's good.
Woo! Yeah, absolutely. Righto, so the pain is over. We have removed the pilot bearing. Now it's time to put a new pilot bearing in. This clutch kit is an extreme outback clutch kit. Like I said before, there's heaps of clutch kits out there. This kit came with everything. New pilot bearing, new thrust bearing, alignment tool, the whole lot. There's our new bearing. Now what we have done is we've spent a fair bit of time cleaning up the whole inside of that so that we don't get in the same situation as we did before with a jammed bearing or damaged or anything like that. So cleaned up in here a little bit of weld splatter that we used to get the old bearing out. I've linished the inside of it just with some emery paper and cleaned it all out, and it is it's actually really clean now, so it looks good. All we're going to do is put that in. If you've got a bearing installer, that's great. All we're going to use is a 24mm socket. That is the perfect size socket for the outside of that bearing there. We're going to line it up, tap that bearing into place, and happy days. Hopefully happy days. Just give it a quick hit with some R1 in there, just to help it slide in. Line that bearing up, make sure we're nice and square. You don't want it to kick in on an angle. Then we can get your tool or your 24mm socket. We can slowly tap that in again. Using a dead blow hammer will help, just because it gives you a little bit more control, and then you can give it a last tap with a main hammer to hit it home. Just want to make sure that around here is nice and clean. There's no burrs or anything on it, so when we put our flywheel on, make sure your dowel pin is nice and clean. Again, no burrs or damage, so your flywheel goes on nice and easily. If there is, just give it a little bit of lineage paper and clean it up, any of those little burrs that might come across. Let's get the flywheel up. We've got our dowel pin. I'll put mine directly down, so that way we can just try to hopefully line it up. Now, when I was taking it off, I didn't have the bolts in far enough just to hold it in place. My bad. And it fell unbelievably off camera. I caught it in a crazy juggle. But anyway, let's move forward. Enough of my blabbering. So you can sit it on the dowel pin, sit on this locator, and then we can start putting all our bolts in. And make sure we use some thread locker. Right, our thrust bearing. Now this one here is flogged out. So again, the kits come with the new one. So we'll remove the old one off this, install the new one on, and then get that set up ready to go for the clutch. Let's knock this one out. Righto, so all we're going to do is just sit that in a vise with our tabs facing away. 38mm socket. Beat it out. There's our old one. Now it is totally practice. We'll clean this up, we'll put our new bearing on, and that will be ready to go. Righto, new thrust bearing. We'll just sit that in there, make sure it's nice and straight and square before we do anything. Dead blow hammer, nice and soft. Make sure we're nice and square. Perfect. Now we're home. That feels so much better than before. The other one was very sloppy, very groundy. That one's there, ready to go onto our clutch fork. Now just throw our little retainer clips in. Done. Clean the flywheel with some brake cleaner. All our greasy hands and all that stuff that's been on it. We'll make sure that's nice and clean. Righto, similar to the way we came off, we've got 3 dowel pins that we need to line it all up to. We're going to use our clutch aligning tool, try to line it all up on those dowel pins, and we can do everything up nice and solid once it's all aligned. Tricky part is getting it all done with one set of hands. Okay, one of those pins. Righto, with our alignment pin, everything in place, we've set it on our 3 dowel pins. Give it a tap, just to lock that on that dowel pin. It's not going to go anywhere now. Okay, now we can put our bolts in, do our bolts up. Righto, that's it. So make sure you go around, do all your bolts up again, and we're happy days. Righto, the next thing is we've got our new thrust bearing onto our arm. We have this little clip pin here. Now that just goes on inside. That just locates onto our pin just on the inside here. Coming from the bottom, we'll slide our arm up through our hole, lining all that up, and just line up our 2 supports pins. We'll slide it straight on and it should lock in place. So we can do all this with the camera in the way. So we just had to undo these 2 bolts just to pop that shaft back in place, to line everything back up. No big drama, just make sure you put this plate back on where your spring goes. We'll do these 2 bolts back up now. Just grab our spring, some vice grips, and we can pop that straight onto place. Righto, the best thing is you've got it all together, it's all assembled, and you forget something. My rubber boot. No big drama, all we'll do is just pull that clutch arm back off, slide the boot straight back on and put it back together exactly the same way. I'll buy a new seal for this side, I'll seal up the bottom plate, and then that way hopefully we won't get too much dust and water and mud and crap all up inside the new clutch, keeping it all nice and clean. So I'll throw that boot on, no big drama. Righto, so it's all back together, we put the boot on, we're totally finished. But unfortunately, I've broken the cast bracket that my clutch cylinder bolts to. So it's cracked right through. Not a big issue, it just means I've got to find a new one. Unbolt and bolt on. It's nothing super hard to get. Worst case scenario, I'll pull it off the LX at home and chuck it on this one. Right, you can see the issue of this. You can see it had been welded previously before. And it's broken right where it had been welded. So it's probably lucky that it broke now while we were just sort of doing it up. Just snapped really easily, because if that had happened on Long Drive for a Drought, it would have been a bit more drama. So right, there's a replacement item. We'll chuck that on, put all that clutch back together, and then we'll put the drive lines in. And I'd like to try and find a boot cover or a cover for this one again. Again, I'll probably pull it off the LX and chuck it on this one to get us going. Right, so that's it. Clutch is replaced. Everything's new in there. The pilot bearing, as you saw, was an absolute nightmare, but we got it done thanks to Ian's help. Huge thank you to Ian, so that was pretty massive. And yeah, if you want to keep up, 5-speed gearbox next. Subscribe down below. Feel free to leave a comment. Until next time, take care of yourselves.